Welcome to On the Chain. This is Jeff here with co-host Chip. We have a great guest with us tonight, none other than Matt Hamilton. You guys know him from Ripple X. He's coming to talk to us about a new gig, and that is with Bittensor, which is a decentralized neural network. Chip, this is all about AI and digital asset, all kind of merged into one. Man,
It's very, very cool. So let's get this started. Let's learn more about this project. You guys are ready. Let's go.
Welcome to On the Chain.
And without further ado, let's bring him in. This is Matt Hamilton. You guys probably originally know him from the XRP community, and he's the ultimate FUD buster pretty much everywhere. And now he's the new FUD buster when it comes to AI. But we're going to talk about his new gig and what his role is going to be at Bittensor. Matt, welcome to On the Chain once again.
Matt,
hey guys. Hi Jeff. Hi Chip. How you doing?
Doing good.
Cool.
Great. It's awesome to see you. Awesome to have you on.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for having me back on. It's cool.
That's great. Yeah, it's great to have you back on here. And the next time we have you back on, you might be calling us from Mars when the first transmission. Who knows? I mean, anything can happen at this point. You're like, he's not on Earth anymore, so we got to see if we can get a transmission going. But we want to learn more about Bittensor, and it's kind of, there's a lot of cool stuff going on with that. So I'd like to sort of start by, first of all, for everybody watching, what is Bittensor?
Right. Okay. So this may take a while, but I'm going to try and explain a bit about machine learning and AI in a nutshell, and kind of work up to what Bittensor is. But in a nutshell, Bittensor is combining both AI and blockchain, right? So if you're a LinkedIn recruiter, this is kind of like your dream, right? You can hit all the buzzwords in one go. So what is it? So if you look at machine learning and AI, you can kind of break it down into two sort of main camps. There's some others, but there's two we're going to concern ourselves with. What's called supervised learning, or what's called unsupervised or self-supervised learning. So with supervised learning, it's kind of a case of, here's a bunch of questions, here's a bunch of answers, learn how to map between the two, right? It's like, okay, here's 100 pictures of dogs, here's 100 pictures of cats. I've told you they're dogs, I've told you they're cats. Learn what a dog is, learn what a cat is. And then when I show you a picture, tell me whether it's a cat or a dog, right? That's supervised learning. Unsupervised learning is kind of like, go forth, read everything on the internet and learn, right? Just learn what's going on, right? It's kind of like taking somebody and sticking them in a library and saying, look, just read every book. And then going up to them, asking them, okay, explain how an aircraft wing works, or explain the plot of Macbeth, right? So somebody, has gone in and basically just read what they can, learned what they can, and from there are able to answer much more kind of free form questions, right? Now, you may have seen two particular models recently, GPT-3 and one called dall-e by the OpenAI project, that showcase this kind of unsupervised learning, right? So GPT-3 is a model where you can give it some starting text and it'll go away and just keep writing, right? You can give it an opening sentence and it'll write a whole, short story for your paragraph or whatever. It's quite amazing, right? And it's been trained by just kind of going through and reading like literally the entirety of Wikipedia and Reddit and a whole bunch of websites, right? And it's just learned a whole bunch of stuff. It's pretty phenomenal. But and dall-e is a similar one that can do something similar with images, right? You can say, draw me a picture of, a fish on a bicycle in the style of Monet, right? And it'll come back with an image of exactly that. It's phenomenal stuff. The big problem with that is that takes a vast amount of training data, right? And a vast amount of computing power, large amounts of they normally use GPUs. So similar kind of stuff that's being used for things like Ethereum mining and that kind of thing, to process all this data. And the model that it creates, i.e. the thing that you feed the input into and get the output out, becomes so large that most people, you can't just download it and run it locally, right? It's just too big. You would need, a whole cluster of graphics cards with gigabytes of data, gigabytes of memory on in order to run it, right? So people like OpenAI, they've created these great models, but they're sort of semi-proprietary, right? They're not allowing anybody to just download them and use them, because it's kind of partly it's their proprietary training that they've invested in, but also you can't, as an end user, really use it because they're just too big, right? You can download it and just run it on your machine. So what's Bittensor trying to do? Bittensor is trying to do something similar with unsupervised learning, but decentralized. So if you think about like the way that something like Bitcoin and proof of work works, right? So with Bitcoin, now Bitcoin, if you think about it, is the largest computational network on the planet by like many, many, many orders of magnitude, right? It's like 400 times bigger than all the data centers in the world combined or something. I don't know the exact figure, but it's the amount of computing power in Bitcoin is huge. But within Bitcoin, it's not really doing much, right? It's kind of trying to find the way the analogy I use is it's like solving Sudokus, right? And every computer is all solving a Sudoku, and whoever gets there first, they win. They get to choose which transactions go in the next block. Everybody else's work is effectively discarded and wasted. Even the miner that finds the block, the actual result of the puzzle that they were solving is discarded. It's useless. The only thing it's used for is to find who's first, right? And that's the only thing that they use it for within Bitcoin, right? So imagine if instead of doing all that wasted work, you could actually use that work for something far more useful, like training a machine model, right? Machine learning model. So that's what Bittensor is. It's combining like AI and machine learning and a decentralized network in which you have miners on the network, and those miners are not contributing like just, proof of work that's effectively being wasted. What they're doing is they're contributing machine learning capacity, and effectively they're sort of contributing intelligence. Actually, is when you get right down to it, it's machine intelligence that they're contributing, which is this quite like mind-blowing thing.
Let me ask you a question, Matt. So obviously, we were talking earlier. I have some experience with GPT-3, the OpenAI, and it's so mind-blowing that you feed it a couple words and what it would write, and you refresh it and it writes something, and you obviously can check it for plagiarism, and it's all original. So this is kind of scary stuff, because the AI that I prefer is the one that doesn't lock you out of the spaceship. That's the one, the right. one that I'm more in favor of, that like advances technology but doesn't like, sorry,
exactly. Are we creating Skynet here now?
Right.
Now,
we don't want Skynet.
We don't want Skynet.
We want the time
and we
machine,
definitely don't want the T800.
No,
yeah,
but I was
wondering
the time
when you
machine,
get
Jeff.
Yeah.
Go back and buy some Bitcoin.
If we could get the time machine, that'd be cool. And it's funny because Alchemist, as we're kind of
getting
right there, he's thinking the same thing. You guys are at least building the beginning stages of the T800. The only thing that's missing, though, is all the great stuff that we're going to benefit from in the meantime. So, right when Skynet was formed, there was no blockchain part of it. Nobody was making money except for Skynet. So now, how great is it that everybody that's into crypto might have an opportunity to benefit, before the invent of the T800 for a short time.
And one of the founders of Bittensor, Jake, he kind of says, well, the fact that a killer robot from the future hasn't come back yet and killed us, does that mean that we've not succeeded? Because surely if we're succeeding, then it would come back. But it's the paradox, of course, because if we succeed, they come back and kill us, which means we wouldn't have developed it. That's what happens in Terminator, right? So I don't know, but I mean, as you say, Chip, I mean, it's some of this stuff is truly staggering. The intelligence that's being built up in these systems. And so, you mentioned about how people involved in crypto could get involved. Now, that's where the crypto part comes into Bittensor. So Bittensor has its own currency, a currency called Tau, and that is used to incentivize people to contribute these computing resources to this global machine learning network, right? So your computer can be running a miner for the Bittensor network or a validator, it's got like a two-step network. I might talk about that a bit more in detail, but there's a couple of different entities that you can run on the network, and you will be rewarded in tau for running them. But what's
And that was
interesting,
TAO,
TAU,
right? TAU,
TAU,
right.
tau, yeah. And
There you
so tau was issued. Well, it wasn't like pre-mined; it's a completely fair issue, right? They started off with like 0. There's going to be 21 million. There's a halving every 4 years. It follows the same pattern as Bitcoin in that regards. But the founders didn't do like some big pre-mine or anything like that. They're mining it along with everybody else, right? And what is cool about this is the amount of tau you receive is proportional to effectively like the quality of your contribution, the quality of the knowledge that you're supplying to the network, right? So, if you imagine you've got a room full of people and they're all just like random people that have just turned up, they're in this room and you are, you're asking them, to whatever, a question, right? If somebody knows, right, you're asking them a question on whatever, astrophysics, right? If you've got an astrophysicist there, right, that's more valuable to you for that question than, somebody who, knows the ins and outs of Chaucer, right, for that question. So you can reward, or rather the network will reward miners and contributors to the network based upon like the quality of their contribution to the network, how much new intelligence they're bringing, how much new knowledge they're bringing to the network. So Bittensor plus tau equals a T8000.
That's so wrong.
Now, NVIDIA have this like AI like chassis with a load of cards in it and stuff, tensor processing units called the A100, and I'm surprised they didn't call it the T800.
That would have been a mistake, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine that went to marketing, and marketing went, nah.
Yeah, that's not good.
We're not doing that. So yeah.
But
Well,
here's another good comment. Here is from JF. If AI is going to go Skynet or whatever, I'd rather it be distributed and democratized than proprietary and owned by, say, Google or Meta or whoever.
Yeah.
On the right.
Yeah.
Well, that's my question. So how does the decentralization part come in? Because the actual tech itself is decent. Like that's the part I'm not. Help us understand that connection, because obviously the OpenAI with GPT-3, and you also have dall-e. Those are owned. Those are corporate owned. They've got their own server farms. But how does this compare, and how is it decentralized?
Right. So in like two sort of main ways. One, the computing power that is using to train these models is decentralized. It's spread around, right?
Yeah,
it's running on my computer and on your computer, and right. It's not just in one central data center somewhere, right? So it's spread around. But then the other thing that's really interesting with it is that, so at the moment, like AI models are, so most of AI research is done by these big corporates, as you say. It's people like Google. Actually, Uber have one of the best like AI teams as well that's working on. Not Uber, Tesla. Sorry,
Tesla makes sense. Yeah.
I'm sure Uber probably do as well, but Tesla have as you'd imagine, a pretty good AI team. Google. Who else? Yeah, but there's a number of these, and there's not a huge number of them, right? But they're very well funded, have a lot of resources. If you are just some small startup in just beginning, you don't have access to the same hardware that they have, and also you don't have access to the same knowledge within the AI systems, right? So let's take another analogy, right? If you want to, so the network we mentioned, dall-e, right? I can say to it, draw me, a pigeon eating a burrito, right? And it will come back with that. But first of all, if you think what it's got to do first is it's got to analyze that sentence, a pigeon eating a burrito, and it's got to understand what, first of all, what are the words in that, split it up on spaces, work out what the words are. And then it's got to think, okay, so what's a noun, what's a verb, And then it's got to say, okay, pigeon, what's that? Well, it's a bird. It kind of, so it's got to understand a large amount of just general English before we get into, or general language, before we get into the image side of things, right? So first it's got to understand the language so it can understand what you're asking of it before it can then, work on the image side of things. So something like dall-e will use something like GPT-3, I believe it is, to start with as its basis, right? Now, if you're trying to create a neural network and a machine learning model, yourself, that you want to use to do something, you've kind of got to start from scratch, right? And you've got to teach it, first of all, okay, this is what sentence structure is. This is what a noun is, before you get into the whatever it was you wanted it to do, create song lyrics or something, right? So you've got to kind of do all that initial bit yourself. Now, what's interesting with Bittensor is you can use Bittensor as a base model effectively, and extend that with your specific bit. So it's kind of like, okay, you already understand sentence structure. I want you to create song lyrics, right? So you don't have to start with creating the sentence structure. You can just work on the song lyric bit and train it to learn song lyrics. Now it already knows what the sentence structure is, what words are, etc. Right? So you can kind of jumpstart your process and be, that much closer to where you want to be to start with. But again, what's really cool with this, the decentralized nature, is, okay, so Chip, you're working on a neural network to come up with song lyrics, right? To generate song lyrics. And you're using the, Bittensor as the back end, so you don't have to get it to understand sentence structure, right?
Like
Jeff, you're working on one that is, I don't know, creating cooking recipes, for example, right? So you're both able to use that same back end, but the knowledge that your networks individually learns also gets propagated into the main network. So the main bit of Bittensor starts to understand song lyrics, starts to understand recipes, and it might well be that Chip, you end up with a song lyric that mentions something about cooking or something, right? Because
Parmesan cheese, who knows?
Exactly, it can understand both of those things, right? So what you're doing is you are in the decentralized nature of it, it's also cooperative, right? You are not just working in silos, which is what's happening kind of at the moment. It's these individual companies working on different machine learning models, but it's contributing to this like collective pool of effectively knowledge, of understanding that the network has. So each individual, contribution that people are doing, and each custom bit of work they're doing, is also possibly benefiting the network as a whole and benefiting other users. So that's what's really cool.
So
Yeah,
at
it's
this
very cool,
point,
very ambitious.
Can you are there active miners? Because I'm looking on the network here. Looks like there's some information on the network metagraph with the neurons and all sorts of things going on here.
Yeah, just to set expectations, this is a really new early project. Their main net went live only a number of months ago. But on the network at the moment, I think we've got about 3,600 miners. That's what the active neurons that are on the network. So those are all individual computers or individual CPUs that are running the code there. And whether or not, I don't know whether you can see there, whether you can kind of zoom in. There's a kind of a notion of rank and of trust and of incentive. So the nodes in there that are contributing the most kind of intelligence ends up getting the most dividends, paid to them. So that's the
interesting. So
the kind of way it works.
So since it's a limited number, 21 million. What is there a value assigned to it right now? Is the only way is this something that would be purchased at some point
of Tau the currency?
Tau the currency.
So at the moment it's not on any exchanges. So that's one of the things that's going to be sort of happening, in the next kind of stages that we're going on. So at the moment, the Bittensor network is the blockchain side of things is based upon part of like Polkadot's ecosystem, right? I think called substrate, and
Hmm.
then it's going to be the next plan is for it to become a parachain on the Polkadot network, which is a bit like a side chain on the XRP ledger, right?
Hmm.
So it's going to be a separate network on the Polkadot network, which will allow Tau to then go onto the main network to access decentralized exchanges on the Polkadot network. So yeah, at the moment, if you want to buy them, there's a Discord channel, and there's there's peer-to-peer sales. People on there kind of occasionally offer to buy or sell it. So Tau is, according to the peer-to-peer sales recently, people seem to be valuing it at around sort of $8 to $10 a piece. So
And this looks like really light evening reading. So if you
yeah,
want to check out the
exactly.
white paper,
Yeah,
kind of gets into
Yeah.
all this stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and all
can
these
be
basic calculations, Chip, that you kind of we
Yeah,
talk about these things.
it's your
Like
normal
normal
run of the
stuff,
mill
right? Normal
decentralized
stuff that
AI
we're
project,
texting back
Jeff.
and forth to each other during the day,
Pretty much.
Yeah.
right? Holy cow!
That's a real white
It's-
paper right there, Jeff. It's
Yeah.
not.
Oh yeah, it's a
It
real
is.
academic paper.
Yeah,
This is-
academic is what it looks like. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's
that's
amazing. Look at this.
But it's a pretty ambitious project.
Yeah.
But I love the whole decentralized nature, and also, see, this makes a lot more sense to me. I mean, I get, obviously Bitcoin was the first attempt, and there were better, there are better versions. But this whole idea of solving a problem in a decentralized manner and involving
Wow.
others and the ability to earn, you're not only solving the problem, but instead of like where you solve that computation for Bitcoin, you, like you said, you race to whoever gets that first, and then you get the right on the block, you get to validate the transaction. That sort of come from is great for what it is, but but this here to me makes a lot of sense. So you've got that finite number, you've got this currency which actually has a very strong utility and a very unique utility, and right now it doesn't have any other competition. There isn't really nothing like this. So it's pretty interesting.
Exactly. There's nothing quite like this. There's some other systems for sort of decentralized machine learning that are just kind of like, okay, take a model and train it on a lot of different computers, right? Just to make it a bit faster. Just pretend you've got a 2000 processor computer or something.
Yeah, right.
But again, it's all individual efforts that are happening. It's all siloed computation that's happening. Whereas the point with this is that it is kind of combined together. Like I said, it's a cooperative kind of effort. So we're building. So what would potentially become, the next version, say GPT-4, for example, or 5 or whatever, it might be, could potentially be built on Bittensor and be contributed to by everybody in this YouTube channel potentially, right? And accessed by them as well, right? So if you're a programmer and you want to be able to use AI and machine learning in your application, then the idea with Bittensor is you will be able to do that. At the moment, you can do. It's a little bit more involved, but we're trying to simplify it even more. So it's kind of a case of, okay, if you add these like 5 lines of code into your Python code, then you can access this brain. So you can feed it the start of your song lyric, and it will come back with the rest of the verse or whatever it might be that you're doing, right? Just by, say, 5 lines of code and paying, say, a bit of Tau to the network to access it, to use it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the point, is that you're sort of paying on demand and people are contributing. So we've created effectively a perfect market to basically buy and sell in machine intelligence effectively.
And it looks like, so is this open if people want to start mining it?
Mm-hmm.
Is this something they can just go into the platform and register? And as long as you can meet the minimum criteria here, so you need 8 vCPUs.
Yeah.
And you can use
Ubuntu or Mac.
Yep, or Mac. That's nice. And obviously a good stable internet.
Yeah, you need a good stable internet connection, because partly the rewards from Tau are based upon like the quality of the information, but also kind of like how quickly and reliably you respond. So if your machine keeps dropping off, so at the moment there's a maximum number of miners that can be on the network. And so if you don't meet the kind of the minimum, then you won't get onto the network, right? And you've kind of got to be above somebody else, and you'll effectively boot them off. We're working on expanding that to be able to have more. We're using a system called subnetworks, subnets within Polkadot to allow us to kind of scale that even further. So, a bit like, in the XRPL world, Brad Garlinghouse, crawl, walk, run. We're kind of in a similar thing. We're very much at the crawl stage at the moment, but it works, right? We've got it. You can actually go in and do it. I've got a miner set up running, so you can kind of do that. And right at the top of, possibly at the top of this page or the main Bittensor page, there's a link to the Discord channel, and that's kind of the main area. So we're working on all the documentation at the moment, and my role. So I'm coming in as Director of Developer Relations, and so I'm going to be doing something similar to what I did at with the XRPL community, and before that at IBM, and that is doing things like hackathons, live stream documentation, whatever, speaking at conferences, that kind of thing, telling people about Bittensor and how they can use it, helping them use it.
Do you want to drop that in the chat there, Jeff? That
The Discord here.
Yeah, put the Discord in there.
So we can grab that.
People are curious.
Very curious. Here's a nice invite.
There it is. Yep. Bam-o. So you dropped it in there. And whether you're on Twitch or wherever platform you're watching it on, Twitter, we could probably drop in the Twitter as well. But
just to correct, I actually got it back to front. Sorry, it's late here. It is TAO, not TAU.
Oh, see, I was saying
you were right in the first place. You're right in the first place.
Because I was thinking, I thought I had that right, but then I switched it. Now I'm switching it back.
Tau is Tau Alpha
Tau.
Epsilon.
Yeah.
TAU, but TAO makes more sense.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, well, guys, we have it right because that's what I had it on the
graphic.
The graphic, and also to. So that's good too. There were a couple of questions here. What do you have here? Is this true here? Martin Redwood says data sharing be done by IOTA.
No, it'll be done by so it's done. So the data sharing itself is done effectively separately peer-to-peer, like not on a blockchain.
Okay.
And then it's the rewards that is done via the blockchain, and that's like I said, it's going to be a Polkadot parachain that does that. So it's based upon Polkadot's kind of ecosystem.
And why was that ecosystem chosen?
To be honest, I don't know. I'm not sure why Polkadot was chosen. I think because in terms of what they wanted to do, they wanted to set up effectively a separate network. So they wanted something like a parachain or a sidechain or whatever. And I guess they started before things like the XRP Ledger sidechains existed. So I'm guessing their choices were kind of Polkadot parachain or something like a Cosmos network. I don't know Cosmos or Polkadot well enough to kind of know why one was chosen over the other.
Yeah, somebody was AI of Alexandria was saying anyone who wants access to Bittensor's API, they'll need to buy Tau and stake it on a validator. Is that?
Yeah. So in order to access it, yes, you have to buy Tau. You have to stake it on a validator. Now there might be third-party services that run a validator on your behalf and allow you access. So, for example, if Bittensor, we're creating like a playground that will give you like a web interface that you can go in. And obviously, if you have to go and buy Tau and set up a validator just to use that, that's going to be, hugely a big source of friction. So it might be that, say, we run a validator on your behalf just for playground, just for playing around, or there could be other models. So imagine if you combined it with something like streaming, monetization, and Coil or something like that, right? You could possibly do something where you have some other mechanism by which you can pay a third party in order to do it, or you might be able to do something similar again, like the I know at least on the Cosmos network, I'm not sure about Polkadot, you can delegate your stake to a validator, right? So you can hold some Tau, but you don't have to run a validator. You can just stake your delegate your Tau to a validator. In that regard.
So where do you get Tau?
So the moment to get
wanted to get
Tau,
around.
well, either you can start a miner and you can start earning it, or on the Discord channel, like I said, there's occasionally people on there selling peer-to-peer.
Gotcha.
But the eventual plan will be it'll be on exchanges and on a DEX. So the first DEX, we're going to try and get onto one of the Polkadot DEXs.
So when you set up the miner and you have that running, what was the process that you went through building this miner?
So you actually had the instructions kind of up there, but you run a set of instructions to create a cold key, create a hot key. But you have to download. There's an install script. You download, run it. You run those two, and that will then start it up and get it going. Now, when you first start, there's a registration phase that has to go through. That's where you really need a large number of CPUs for that to function. And it does effectively a proof of work type step to get through the registration phase, just to basically stop a gazillion people going and registering to start with. So it does that registration step, and once your hotkey is registered, then it starts going through and starts effectively answering questions from the network, right?
Okay.
And you can
what
run.
Does that look like? Sorry.
What's what look like?
So when you're building this out from a hardware perspective, right? 16 gig RAM is easy, 100 gig of disk space easy. What about the 8 CPUs?
8 CPUs. Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on the processor. You've got. I mean, if it's kind of cores on a machine, well, AMD have 16 core machines now that you can get. Recent MacBooks have 10 cores in, I think. So, I mean, I will be honest. I think those specs there now are slightly out of date, and I think you might need a bit more in order to get through the registration step. So I did it recently with a 32 CPU. I just went to hell with it and just got a big behemoth and just ran it, and it got through.
Gary Saliba wants to know what software development languages are supported. Is it Python or what's?
So yeah, it's written in Python. I think there's an element of Rust in there as well. But the majority of it, I believe, is written in Python. And that's certainly how you'd access it.
Right.
So what I'm hoping to be doing, in the next whatever number of weeks, we'll be starting to do some demos.
You mean tomorrow?
You mean tomorrow? Yeah. Do some demos of how you would access it in Python. So we've done a kind of an internal demo on the Discord a couple of weeks ago when the founders Jake did a demo using a Python notebook, which is basically Python running in a browser, and kind of showed the kind of process of doing a query against the network, what's called inference. You give it some text and it comes back with the next bit of text in the sequence, right?
And so will there eventually be a front end once that this is happening on the back end where it will actually be a product of some kind where
it could well be. It could well be. Again, it depends on who builds that, right? Whether that's a project. So like I said, Bittensor is part of, we've started a foundation called the Open Tensor Foundation. So whether that's another separate project under Open Tensor Foundation, whether that comes under Bittensor, whether that's somebody entirely separate that creates that, I'm not sure. I mean, it's one of those things. It's a decentralized network, right? You could go and build it tomorrow, Chip, if you wanted, right? Get chop, go on.
Yeah, sure. I'll just do that. Why not?
Why not?
Where's the project based out of? Is it a...
So the Open Tensor Foundation is legally based in Canada. The kind of sort of nominal hub is Toronto. Is probably where the most people. I mean, it's a small team. It's about a dozen people at the moment. A number of them are in Toronto, but they are spread about. So all the way on the other side over at Vancouver. One of the founders at the moment is down in Peru. I'm in Barbados. One of the developers is in South Africa. I think there's one in Spain or Germany at the moment. So yeah, we're kind of spread around. It's entirely run over Discord. The plan is eventually that the Open Tensor Foundation will become a DAO itself. And so that's the kind of we're early in the bootstrapping phases.
I was staring at that thing. I was staring at it for a long time, and I felt like it was like was calling to me or something. It was like
You stared into the abyss, and the abyss
I
stared back.
did. It stared back, but it was like it was taunting me at the same time. I'm like, hey man, I'm not gonna take that.
This is the neural network. This
It is.
right.
By the way, Zober wants to know, like,
Yeah.
what would Chuck Norris do? Stare into that thing all day long is probably what I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Man, how it changes.
Yeah.
Never.
How about
the
this
same.
one? Here's a hometown one. Do you miss Bristol at all? I'm from West End, Supermare.
No.
He's in the sunshine. Have you not seen his Twitter? I mean, man, he's hanging out with a dog, drinking beers on the beach.
Okay, so hanging out with the dog and drinking beers on the beach is an interesting story as to how I ended up at Bittensor, right? So as you folks know, I was at Ripple for about a year, and then I left Ripple. My wife had been ill, and I left Ripple to kind of look after her. I took a few months off. Now, I suddenly found out, I got in touch with somebody who I was mutually friends with on Twitter. I kind of introduced to myself a woman here in Barbados that's involved in a thing called the Barbados Blockchain Association. And she says to me, hey, look, there's this event in 2 days' time. The Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, is going to be there as well. It's being run by a venture capitalist from Silicon Valley, a guy called Bill Tai, who was like one of the first investors in Zoom and invested in like a whole bunch of stuff, right? And he's like an avid kite surfer, and they're coming here. They're going to be doing a bit of a retreat. They're going to be kite surfing. They're going to be doing talks. Come along. So the main like event, it's thousands of dollars and tickets are sold out. But I managed to get along to the reception, and I met the Prime Minister, Mia Mottley, which was pretty cool, and talked to a few of the people there. And the next day, I went and basically gate crashed their event on the beach, right? Because the beaches are public here in Barbados, right? So I turned up. And I turned up with my paddleboard and the dog, right? Because I knew they'd be doing stuff on the beach. So I thought, I'll come down here. Now, the waves were too big to go paddleboarding, right? There was a bunch of people there surfing and whatever. So I was kind of sat there with the paddleboard and the dog. And, I was taking the dog up down the beach and chatting to people. Anyway, this woman comes up to me and starts fussing the dog. Oh, cute dog, blah, blah, blah. And I see she's got an Actai t-shirt on, which is the name of the event, right? And I say, I said, oh, you're with Actai? Yeah, fine. What do you do? And I said, well, I used to work at Ripple as director of developer relations at Ripple. Oh, yeah, I know Ripple. Cool. And then before then, I was at IBM doing machine learning developer advocacy. And I said, I've taken some time out to help my wife, and I'm starting to think what to do next. And she goes, I've got a job for you. I was like, what?
Amazing.
And it turns out that she was Ileana, her name is, and she's the managing director of innovation at Accenture in Canada, in Toronto. And they'd been running a kind of like an incubator stroke, almost like a Shark Tank, Dragon's Den type thing there that Bittensor had gone into and pitched to. And so she'd been working with them. And she's like there on the beach, gets her phone out, says, I'll send them a message on LinkedIn. Because it's like they're interested in blockchain, machine learning, and are looking for somebody to help with developer, relations and community building. And it's like there I'm still on the beach. It's like the Venn diagram of things I'm interested in, right? It's like machine learning, which is what I was doing at IBM, blockchain, what I was doing at Ripple, and developer advocacy, which is what I was doing at developer relations, which is what I was doing at both of them, right? And she gets his message back and says, "Oh yeah, they want to have a chat." So I had an interview the next day. They're like, "Oh, let's have an interview with the founders." And so I got to meet Jake and Ala, the two founders, on via a video call. We chatted, and they're like, "Yeah, great. Let's start then." So, from 3 weeks from walking my dog on the beach to my first day at Bittensor, it was pretty cool.
Let's give them a little bit of airtime there. There's Ala and Jacob right there.
Yeah, so they did that's a great podcast there. That Towards Data Science podcast is a great interview with the two of them about the project as well. So, but they're both like ex Google like AI researchers and stuff. Yeah,
there you go. Google. Yeah, I think Google. The funny thing about Google is they've sunsetted, I think, more companies than I can ever imagine. Like that, the sunset list is massively long. But if you look at the ex Googlers, Yahoo, you name them, they've all gone. Even ex Facebook have gone on to found some pretty amazing companies. So it's a good launch board. So that is actually, what was another one here? Some other question here. Let's see what this one is. When can we trade a model that's 1-to-1 dall-e 2 on Bittensor?
So at the moment, Bittensor only deals with language problems at the moment, natural language processing, text stuff. So it doesn't understand images at the moment.
Yet.
But there's exactly. So there's a project that we're working on at the moment called Synapses. A lot of the terminology around Bittensor kind of is taken from the human brain. And there's a project we're working on called Synapses that will allow you to have different ways to access different kind of APIs that can understand different modalities, right? So one could be text, one could be audio, one could be images, for example, right? So once we've got that in, and that's in kind of development, once we've got that in, then we'd be able to do images as well. So yes, there's a chance we could come up with something that is one-to-one with dall-e, and that's where we're aiming, right? The ultimate holy grail is that everybody's kind of working towards at the moment is a single model that understands all of these different modalities, understands language, understands images, understands audio, kind of all at one. At the moment, you generally have separate networks, right? So the neural network that powers, say, Alexa or Siri understands voice, right, and can convert voice. The one that recognizes, whether you're going to crash into something, your Tesla recognizes video and images, right? So the kind of holy grail is a single neural network that understands all of these different things. And there's a few that people have been working on. There's one recently that's come out that is kind of going in that direction. So, but that's where Bittensor ultimately is going to be. Yeah,
that's good stuff. Okay. Well, look at the time. My gosh, where does it go? It's
wow.
It's already I mean, this is a really exciting project, and it's so different. That's what I love about it. It's such a different.
That's what got me, right. That's what got me interested when they described it to me. I was like, actually, okay, yeah, I'm interested in that.
Well, also too, it's you have a history. It's not, and I mean, it's interesting that you had mentioned that about your background at IBM, but I mean, this is a whole new sort of level, and it's nice to see something original that's actually out to solve a real problem. Especially the decentralized. Like we need more decentralization in the world.
Yeah.
There's Shrimp. Shrimp says, join us on Discord.
Yeah, exactly. The team is a very friendly bunch. There's about 1,000 people in the Discord. So for a project that's only really just started and that has, the documentation is only just being put together, it's amazing that there's, like I said, about 1,000 people or so, that order of magnitude in the Discord, and that they're kind of helping each other out. They're really friendly to me because I joined and didn't let on kind of that I've been talking about, sort of joining the project or whatever. I just kind of went in and just sort of hung out with the people on there. And yeah, everybody was so friendly on there and helped me get things running. So yeah, it's really good.
Awesome.
Nice.
Hey, this is outstanding. It was great seeing you again. And man, it went by so quick. It's great. Every time you come on, we learn something new. But you know what? And now that you're not at Ripple anymore, maybe you can answer this question. Alchemist wanting, did anybody ask you yet,
to flip
about
the switch?
flipping is there really a switch?
David has.
I'm still under NDA. I can't tell you that, Jeff. I can't tell you that. I'd have to kill
desk
you.
or under his desk.
Yeah, I'd have to kill you if I told you. So maybe I'll come up to. I need to get up to Miami again and meet up with you folks, and maybe a few more. What were we on last time?
Mojitos.
A couple more pictures of mojitos. And
a couple more pictures of mojitos.
On Lincoln Road. Yeah, that was all fun. That was good. And somebody had put in the chat that they missed the three of us at the last Miami meetup. So we were at the one in December. So there's one in April, I think. But I think Jeff was out of town. I had something going on. I couldn't make it. So
yeah, so I mean, I'm going to be starting to get along to various events for this. So probably, trying to get to some of the Python conferences, because that's kind of the sort of practical side of things. Also try to get to some of like the machine learning and AI events as well. What's really interesting is like AI and machine learning and cryptocurrency are like two entirely separate worlds, right?
Oh yeah.
And like the AI and machine learning is mainly kind of like, it is like PhD academics and yada, yada, yada. Most of them have a slightly, jaded view of cryptocurrency, shall we say. And and cryptocurrency people kind of look over the academics, right? And they're like, kind of, just we're in it for the dollar, man, right? So it's interesting, right? Straddling both these two worlds. And I've been today looking through all different conferences to work out kind of which ones to go to and which events to go to. And it's going to be it's going to be interesting. But I think we can do it, because I think this is of the kind of like, there's been so many projects that are just kind of like, okay, just add blockchain, right?
Sure.
And it's kind of like,
Right,
what does that add, really? What are you actually doing with that, right? But projects like Bittensor and Coil is another example. I really like what Coil are doing with in the Interledger Foundation with web monetization. But there's a few projects out there that are like, okay, you're really trying to kind of change the way things are working. So yeah, I've just seen the comment there. He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll have to start getting some Monty Python references into our.
We had to at least have one before we end
someone
this.
had to bring.
So that's all good.
Exactly.
Leave it to Steve Willett. So
yeah.
All right. Well, listen. Any parting words? Because exciting project. I'd like to have you back as this progresses too. And anything you want to say in closing?
Yeah, just follow us on Twitter, Bittensor _ I think is the Twitter account there. Find us on Twitter, bittensor.com's website. There's a link to the Discord there as well. If you're interested, come join in the Discord. Like I said, it's a friendly bunch. But yeah, just keep an eye open. This is going to be interesting to see where things go over the the rest of this year. I think it's going to be we're going to be going places.
It's exciting, man. Good to see you landed at a great place, and can't wait to hear more about this project. But it's one of the more interesting projects I think we've talked about. It's so freaking cool. So
Really cool.
I can't wait to even do a deeper dive at some point and see what that Maybe Jeff and I will look into running an OTC.
Man, love to run an OTC miner. That'd be great.
Yeah, it would be great.
Yeah.
Why not, man? So
That'd be cool.
We know somebody can point us in the right direction, so that's all good.
Indeed.
So, all right. Well, listen, from Barbados, man, and here we're signing off from Miami to Barbados, not too far away, closer than here in Bristol. I can tell you that for sure.
Indeed.
But great having you on, and guys, everybody go check out the project, and that's all we have for you guys tonight. We will be back, I think, Saturday morning, and Saturday morning. And that's it. Everybody, take care. Have a great one. See you on the next one. Chip, Jeff, and Matt out. We're out of here.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.